Welcome to the Duval Dive. I'm your host, Travis D Holmes with BigCatCountry.com, the Believe Podcast Network, and the Duval Dive Podcast. Here with the Jacksonville Jaguars updates with the Jaguars getting ready as I'm speaking to begin setting their 17-man practice squad roster. They've made a few transactions. Like you guys already know about the Fred Johnson trade to the Philadelphia Eagles for the seventh round draft pick. And I know that was a big one for many individuals because they didn't believe that Fred Johnson was going to be, not on this week one roster. But nevertheless, it happened. Obviously, the team feels great about Cole Van Lannon and Wyatt Milam's health with that situation, and they probably also feel great about Chuma Edoga and Patrick McCarry's versatility as far as the offensive line is concerned. So that kind of allowed them to go 9 guys on that active roster, and the Jaguars then also picked up an extra pick due to that. But also, before we get into Tim Patrick, I just wanted to mention the other part of that equation with the Fred Johnson situation that I did want to mention is the fact that they paid Fred Johnson $1.3 million and got a draft pick out of it. More importantly, the value of a seventh round draft pick in the 2026 draft is actually $1.74 million. So that's just good business across the board. If you can give away less money than you're going to be getting for a product that is an increase in value, that's just good general business. Not only that, the Eagles end up taking on part of that contract. So yeah, dope business. But let's get to the action of today. The Jacksonville Jaguars have traded for the Detroit Lions wide receiver Tim Patrick. Uh, with the emergence of Isaac Tesla in Detroit, the Jaguars were able to release this 6th round draft pick. Shout out Mark Long and Tom Pelissero for breaking that news. Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars traded for Tim Patrick for a 6th round draft pick to the Detroit Lions. And again, with Isaac Tesla kind of showing his great preseason play in Detroit, the Lions were able to. They had an opening with multiple wide receiver 3 options that allowed Isla Tesla to slide right on in Detroit, and that allowed the Jacksonville Jaguars to pick up a big body 6'5", contested catch, great blocking wide receiver 3 option to fill their wide receiver 5 role. So that's a pretty great situation. Like I know folks may have their feelings because Tim Patrick is a 31-year-old receiver. He has had injury concerns. Like, yes, that's absolutely the fact, but that's why you're trading only a 6th round draft pick. Also, he tore his ACL with the Broncos back in 2022. He tore his Achilles, also with the Broncos in training camp in 2023 season. But outside of that, in 2021 season, he had 51 catches for 742 yards and 6 touchdowns. And in 2021, he had 53 catches, 734 yards and 5 TDs. But he bounced back from those 2022 and 2023 injured seasons with 33 passes caught and 3 touchdowns last year. So to all the folks that keep saying that Trevor Lawrence works better with the contested catch receiver, Trevor Lawrence works better with a guy who's able to be one of those big body Marvin Jones Jr., Zay Jones type receivers. Well, you got what you've been asking for. It almost feels like these guys also see the things that most fans and media have been seeing for previous years. But if that's all that you were looking for, great. But this isn't just Zay Jones. This isn't just Marvin Jones Jr. because this guy is also 3 inches taller than those guys. He's 10 pounds heavier than those guys, and more importantly, he's a dominant blocker. Shout out to Dan Griffiths for pointing this out. That Tim Patrick was Pro Football Focus's 11th ranked run blocker out of 137 eligible wide receivers in the 2024 season. He's a great perimeter blocker. And if you're talking about someone in the run game, that's obviously going to be a great situation for this Jacksonville Jaguars organization. We already talked about that when we talked about the tight ends podcast with the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars brought in Hunter Long because he was fifth, I believe, in the league in run blocking for tight ends in the 2024 season. Like, exactly what this Jacksonville Jaguars offense wants to do. They weren't able to bring a guy in who was a big body perimeter blocking run blocker, in the NFL draft because you just have so limited of those number of guys and you have that limited number of picks and opportunities to bring that type of guy in. So then they end up finding one for a 6th round draft pick. And it's also a 6th round draft pick that originally didn't even belong to them. Because I think folks forget that that was the Seattle Seahawks 2026 draft pick, 6th round draft pick that the Jaguars acquired due to trading Roy Robertson Harris. So, and across the board, that just feels like the guy who's obviously cooking in this situation. But nevertheless, again, we've talked about this. You have an 11th ranked run blocker as far as Pro Football Focus's grading is concerned. I know that's not the Bible, but that's what it states. You also have a guy who had a 66.7 success rate on 3rd and 4th downs in the second half of games last season, including garbage time, which is 3rd best of all receivers for Al Carkinson on X. You have this again, the same guy who's, if you want to look at his contested catch rates, because it's been a little bit all over the place depending on the injuries, the seasons and things of that nature. In 2028, he had a 28% contested catch rate on only 7 targets. 2019, it was 60% on 5 targets, which was 7th in the league. In 2020, it was 52%. Well, 52.4% on 21 targets. Well, again, that's 40th in the league. 2021, 25th, 25th percentile on 16 targets, which is 71st in the league. And in 2024, it was 32.3% on 6 targets, which was 76th in the league. Now, if you're keeping count there's only 64 to 96 starting receivers in the league, depending on if you're a 2 receiver set or a 3 receiver set. So that means you're getting wide receiver one if he's having one of his best seasons, or wide receiver two, general production as far as contested catches are concerned, from a guy who's going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars wide receiver 5. Again, I don't care how you want to cut that. That's moderately great business. And overall, it didn't damage the Jacksonville Jaguars in a major way because, again, you're talking about the fact that the Jaguars still have 11 draft picks after the Fred Johnson trade, after the Tim Patrick trade. And yeah, that's, again, just great business. They're not limited as far as their ability to move up in the 1st round. They're not limited in their ability to gain additional veterans, as far as these types of trades. I mean, again, we see how often that guys go for 6th round picks, 5th round picks, 7th round picks, etc. And now the Jacksonville Jaguars could still potentially not be done from now until November. So again, I think across the board, you're looking at a situation where the Jaguars found another buy low opportunity that's going to enable them to kind of be dominant in that run game and also give Trevor Lawrence a contested catch receiving option. Yeah, and we've seen how Trevor Lawrence has also worked with these guys, whether it's a Marvin Jones Jr. or a Zay Jones, those guys who generally work a little bit better in those contested catch opportunities, and they normally have career years. Marvin Jones Jr. didn't have a career year, but it was one of his second best seasons because he obviously played with Matt Stafford in Detroit. Zay Jones did have a career year with Trevor Lawrence, so I'm not going to necessarily predict that Tim Patrick's going to have his best year ever or anything along those lines. But I do believe we will see, if he can stay healthy, a great solid season for him. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have now acquired De'Ami Brown and Tim Patrick as 2 options for guys who could end up being, worth more than you thought when you originally acquired them. So keep it locked in. We're going to have the Duval Dive podcast tonight live. So come through with your questions. And we should be, digging into that mailbag, answering a few of your questions, discussing the outcome of the 53-man roster and the initial release of the practice squad roster tonight. So again, keep it locked in. Duval Dive. Keep it locked in on BigCatCountry.com, man. Go Jags.